All right, y'all. Welcome to the show. It is a day that we like to call Thanksgiving. It is the Giving of Thanks Day. I believe the historical record of this day is that there was a bunch of weird dudes dressed in BDSM gear who met up with some indigenous folks, and they smoked some peyote together, and they had an orgy, and then some people got murdered. I don't remember all the specifics, but it was something like that. And then everybody ate turkey or something. Anyway. So I got a great show for you today on this wonderful day of the giving of the thanks. And that doesn't stop us, man. Holidays are not stopping us. We are going full speed ahead. So I got Trump voters are furious about what has happened to Trump recently and how he's going after DeSantis and how he's not giving a lot of the money that he raised to other Republican candidates. We're going to talk about that. I have proof that Ron DeSantis is indeed going to run for president. I have Mike Pompeo, who also wants to run for president, proving himself to be the least serious man on the planet. And then later on, I will be defending a priest. I will be defending a horny priest. No, not in the bad way, because we know that usually when there's horny priests, not good, because there's some underage people involved. Not that. Never defend that. It's something else entirely, so wait until you get the specifics of that story. That's kind of crazy. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So, Frank Luntz is a Republican pollster. He went on MSNBC, and he showed this new focus group that he did. He talked to a bunch of Trump supporters, and they're going to tell you what they think of him now. This video is actually very interesting in a number of ways.
Group with one-time Trump voters to get their thoughts on the former president and the man who could be Trump's biggest obstacle in reclaiming the Republican Party's nomination in 2024. That is, of course, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. So, Frank, tell us about the focus group. What were you looking for? What did you hear?
Looks like this shit is not synced up, skis. Let's restart it. Very, very weird. By the way, forgive me. I have absolutely horrendous internet today. I'm in rural Virginia, and this is actually the reason why you guys can't see me on video, because the file would literally just be too large to send through. So we're just trying to make do with what we got. All right, let's go.
Group with one-time Trump voters to get their thoughts on the former president and the man who could be Trump's biggest obstacle in reclaiming the Republican Party's nomination in 2024. That is, of course, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. So, Frank, tell us about the focus group. What were you looking for? What did you hear?
Well, first, we wanted to gather Trump voters, and many of these people had voted for Trump twice. Everyone had voted for him, at least in 2016 or 2020. And we wanted to know where they stood now that he's announced, now that it looks like the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, will be his opponent. We wanted to know how they felt about the man who they used to idolize. And you know what? They still do, but not the same as they used to. It's changed.
Well, you asked a group of the Republican voters to briefly describe Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Let's take a look to see what they had to say.
First, one word or phrase that you would use to describe Donald Trump right now.
Stay off Twitter.
Jamie from Iowa.
I was just going to say the same thing. His new one that he's on, I think he needs to take a break from that one.
Becky.
A narcissist.
Lisa.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Andrew.
Tired.
John.
Unsettling.
Melody.
High hopes.
Marie.
Mistake.
John from North Dakota.
Unrelenting.
Kathy.
Still right.
Eric.
Divisive.
Jim.
Overdone.
John from Georgia.
Fighter.
David from California.
Racist.
Jeff from Texas.
Sanctimonious.
Stacy from Indiana.
Businessman.
Nancy from Illinois.
Calculated.
I'm going to do the same thing now with the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. I'm going to go in the exact opposite order.
Promising.
Stacy from Indiana.
Oh, geez. Interesting.
Jeff from Texas.
Badass.
Kathy from Pennsylvania.
A leader.
Eric from North Carolina.
Hopeful.
Jim from Indiana.
Rising.
John David from Georgia.
I'd say the same thing. Fighter.
David from California.
Promising.
Andrew from South Carolina.
Leader.
John from California.
Visionary.
Melody from Washington.
Amazing.
Marie from New York.
The future.
John from North Dakota.
No apologies.
Lisa from New York.
Gutsy.
Becky from Virginia.
Future of the party.
Jamie from Iowa.
Refreshing leader.
Gregory from Nevada.
Future of the party.
So, Frank, we got some very different responses there. When DeSantis was being asked about it was all positive. Some words like promising, interesting, visionary, the future. Trump, there were some positives, fighter, unrelenting, still right, but also things like unsettling, narcissist, stay off of Twitter, divisive, racist. What does that tell you?
They're tired. They still appreciate him. They still think he was a great president. That hasn't changed. But they now look at him and they say, why all this chaos? Why all this fussing and fighting? Isn't there a better way? And frankly, a lot of them are angry at him for the candidates that he supported and his lack of support for them when they needed it most. Go take a look. And this is something we've not talked about. How much money Trump raised in 2022 and how much actually went to the candidates. If you tell Republican Trump voters that he raised over $100 million and donated only 15% of that or less to those candidates, they get angry. Trump voters are fed up with all the Trump-focused hysteria, and they want someone different. And they see Ron DeSantis at this point as being different.
Yeah, by the way, that's actually a great point by Frank Luntz that, like, when you tell these Republican voters, hey, just so you know, he raised over $100 million nominally for these elections and only gave away less than 10% of it to these candidates. That's a very substantive criticism, especially from their perspective, because these are like generally loyal Republicans. And so that's the kind of stuff that would make them turn on him. But as a general rule, and you guys know this, the media usually focuses on the criticisms of Trump that are like the least substantive and the least likely to change hearts and minds. And like, this is one of those things where they should have talked about it nonstop, because then, yeah, you create a wave of resentment among his own base, among the people who are supposed to be his own supporters. So that's a great point from Frank Luntz. And he says when you bring it up to these people, they're like, oh, shit, well, what a fucking gross prick.
You know, Jen Psaki, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about establishment Republicans turning on Donald Trump. And for Donald Trump, that really doesn't mean too much. I'll tell you, I gave a speech following the midterm election. A lot of Republicans came up to me who were Trump supporters, voted for him twice. They're exhausted. Like Frank said, they're exhausted. And then when they start talking about the fact that Mitch McConnell, gave hundreds of millions of dollars, Donald Trump sat on his money, they do get angry. And we think a lot of times that people aren't as focused on some of these. They are. And the base is focused. And that's spreading around, internet like wildfire, that Trump had all this money, kept it to himself, let these candidates lose.
Yeah, I mean, these words that came up in these focus groups, which is why they're so interesting, are so starkly different, Joe, right? I mean, you have Trump, as Frank said, as you said, everyone is basically saying they're exhausted, they're tired. The thematics around DeSantis are, he is promising, two people use that, visionary, the future, so much hope in that. I wanted to ask you, Frank, you've done a lot of these focus groups at this point in advance of a presidential primary. Were there any concerns that came up from these participants about DeSantis? And what is your gut here on kind of what DeSantis's path forward is in the primary, given their responses?
Well, we even have polling data. Premise, the polling firm asked the question directly of Republican voters: who would you prefer, Trump or DeSantis? And it's a dead heat. So it's not just in focus groups, in survey research, things have changed.
Yeah, so that's something I've seen polls all over the map. Even since Trump blowing this last election, the candidates that were closest to him losing the most, and him melting down on Truth Social, going after Ron DeSantis repeatedly. Even after all that, I've seen some polls where DeSantis is up as much as 7 nationally. Some polls where he's leading by 10 or 20 points in various states. And then other polls where Trump is still leading nationally by like 20 or 30. So I don't know how you're getting these sample sizes that are so different where the variation is that extreme. But what I do know is my default assumption at the moment is that it's kind of close. It's kind of close. When you average everything out, Trump is probably still up by 5 points or so, right? But that's fucking close. That's closer than it ever was previously, when he always had a gigundo lead. So that's my operating assumption at the moment. But this thing can go in 1,000 different directions. So I got a story for you later on. I have very, very strong evidence that indeed DeSantis is going to run. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But honestly, anything can happen from here on out. This focus group is fascinating because you see they're starting to turn on Trump and open up more to somebody like DeSantis. But it is true, he still can crumble under the national spotlight. We've seen it happen a million times with a million different candidates. Rudy Giuliani, going into the 2007-2008 Republican primary, he was the favorite by like over 10 points. And then the second he started talking, he absolutely imploded. So, look, it's possible. It's possible he implodes. It's possible this is all just noise that goes away. Remember, before 2016, everybody thought Jeb Bush was a shoo-in for the Republican primary. I don't think DeSantis is that bad, but we still got a long way to go. But that long way to go can cut in either direction. Trump can implode. Trump can get indicted. Trump can get convicted. Trump can shit the bed in a colossal way. Or DeSantis can shit the bed in a colossal way. You never know. You never know. But these focus groups are indicative of something. It's a tiny, tiny sample size, but it is worth sharing. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.